Hello, it's Lawrence Romanowski from Calgary, Canada. And what we have here is a 2013 Porsche Cayenne GTS. So this is the sportiest variant of the Cayenne range. It's a well-optioned vehicle that I sold new to a guy I actually went to university with. So it's time for him to let it go. It is just over 125,000 kilometers with a recent service. And I'll turn this camera around and do a walkthrough on this particular Cayenne, because I sold them for, well, their entire duration of 8 years when I was at Porsche Center Calgary. I know my way around them, and I can explain some of the different model variants, the MSRPs in Canada, how I advise people to order them, how we brought them in, and how this one is turned out. And this one is also for sale too. So I hope I'll make it an informative video. Please like and subscribe, and contact me if you're in the market for a really quite a cool SUV. Okay, let's turn the camera around. Okay, so I came to Porsche in 2011, and the second generation of the Cayenne, which we call E2, had just come out. We didn't have a single one in stock. We had a demo, and that was the only one. And I remember it was in this sort of vivid color, this yellow color. I used to give the sales guys a hard time if they'd take it to go get lunch or something like that, because it was our only example. I remember our manufacturer representative coming in and saying, okay, well, how many Cayennes do you think you could sell, next year? And I said, well, I think we can sell 200. We want 200 Cayennes for next year. And he said, okay, well, I'll give you 100 Cayennes. We had a long waiting list for the car. It was like a year, and people weren't that happy about it. They would come in and say, I'd like to order a Cayenne. And I'd say, well, we don't have any right now. We're out of stock, but we're ordering them. And can't tell you exactly how long it'll be, but somewhere probably between 6 months and a year. And the customers would say, no, you don't understand. I came in to buy a Cayenne today. Stop being so lazy, get on the phone and get me a Cayenne. And I'd be like, no, really, they're sold out across the country. The other dealers don't have any as well. I just talked to the Montreal dealer, and he stopped taking orders for Cayennes. He wouldn't even take deposits anymore. When I got there at Porsche, there was a file of Cayenne orders with deposits that everybody just forgot about. I was like, well, what's this? It's like, oh, geez, I didn't know we had that. And it was like a file of like 15 Cayenne orders that basically just got misplaced. It took us a full year to get, this is in 2012, a full year to get Cayennes in stock. And virtually and they were all pre-sold. The only ones we had on the floor might have been, a misorder of some sort, or, maybe a car that we got from Porsche that was used as a demo or something like that. So this was a big deal when it came out in 2011. It was like 600 pounds lighter than the car it replaced. It didn't have the original E1 Cayenne didn't have a low range, or had a low range transfer box, which nobody needed. And added a few hundred pounds. This one didn't have it. Just had an 8-speed automatic, where the E1 had a 6-speed. So they got away with not having to put a 200-pound component in it, with just more gears. And this was way more agile. I mean, I like the old Cayennes too. They're really built tough. I mean, they were big, heavy vehicles. But this one was much more agile, even more than the 600-pound saving that you might expect. Okay. So with Porsche, there's all kinds of different model variants, and then all kinds of options. So, I mean, you could order 100 Cayennes and no two of them would be alike. So we first got the V6, which was the VR6, which was, that engine was been around forever and had its origins in a VW Corrado in like 1994. Narrow angle V6, 3.6 liter. It was 300 horsepower. That was the base one. That's what we got the most of. We had the diesel briefly, but we won't talk about that. We only sold about 20 of those, and of course regretted them, even though they were good cars. And then we got the S, which was a 400 horsepower V8. It was a 4.8 liter V8. along with the V6s. And then we got the GTS, Turbo, and the Turbo S, but we didn't get every vehicle in every year. Now, the different Cayenne versions that we got throughout the whole E2 production run, which was 2011 to 2018, they can be broken into E2.1s and E2.2s, and the changeover wasn't the same for every model. So the 0.2 version of the second generation of the Cayenne, they're in the third generation of the Cayenne now, which started in 2019. The second generation of the E2s, for their S and GTS, they went away from the normally aspirated V8 engine. They went to a twin turbo V6. It had 440 horsepower instead of 420, but it lost a lot of the character with the turbocharged engine, okay? So, and then they didn't make the GTS every year. So we got our first GTS in 2013, and I think we just got 2013s and 14s of the GTSs that were the 4.8 normally aspirated 420 horsepower engines. The E2.2s, I don't think we had a 15 GTS or a 16. I think it came for the 17 and 18 GTSs. I could be wrong on that, I'll have to check. But the point is that they only made the normally aspirated GTS in a few years. It wasn't the entire run, and it wasn't the entire run of the E2.1s either, because they don't make GTSs every year. So it's a rare car. So at Porsche Calgary, we would have sold about 100 Cayennes a year, but maybe only half a dozen, 6, 7 or so of the turbos, and maybe only about 10 of the GTSs. All the rest, virtually all the rest, were V6s, and there were a few Cayenne S's as well. Okay, so it's a pretty rare car. Now, the difference between the S and the GTS. Well, if you took a Cayenne S and you gave it all the most sporting options, like let's say you had a Cayenne S and you wanted the 21-inch rims, like this has the Turbo 2 21-inch rims, and then you wanted the sport design kit, so that gives you the more aggressive front fascia. It gives you these extended side sills you can see on the lower part of the body. It gives you these fender arch extensions to cover the extra width of the 10.5. I think they're 295. What are they? 10.5-inch rims with 295 section tires, front and rear, and then it gives you a different bumper cover. So you could order a Cayenne S with that. You could order a Cayenne S with the sport exhaust, which gives you these lovely 4 big exhaust tips and a button on the center console. So you could get, and inside you could get an S with the Sport Chrono package, okay? So, and you can tell it's got that by the little dial in the center. So you can make, and this one is carbon fiber, so you could make this car out of a Cayenne S, with the one exception that you don't get the big red brakes, and you get 400 horsepower instead of 420. The only thing with doing it that way is the Cayenne S would have cost you more than the GTS. So regular Cayenne S's, and keep in mind, these come standard with nothing, absolutely nothing. You have to be really careful on the option list. You know, sunroof, heated seats, like it just, you had to order everything as an option. You could really get surprised by what some of these cars don't have. But anyway, a regular Cayenne might have been about $75,000, and the GTSs were all about 120, and the turbos are about, you know, 180 or something. So the cheapest base Cayenne and the most expensive Turbo S, there's like a factor of 3. Turbo S with 3 times the price of the base one. So the specifications mean everything in a Cayenne, just because there's so much to choose from. But about the GTS, what I advise people is that if you were trying to make a Cayenne S really sporty, then you should get a GTS, because the GTS comes with all of that equipment as standard, the sport design kit, and it starts out with bigger wheels and the sport exhaust and sport chrono, and it has all of those all of those options standard in the price, and it's a better deal. Okay, so if you really wanted a sporty Porsche, then you should start with a GTS, not with an S. It just so happens that a lot of people want their Porsches to be really sporty, so the GTSs were always the easiest to sell, the fastest to sell out. We could never get enough of them, and they're, you know, the most sought after on the used market too, because when people think of a Porsche SUV, they think of something like this, not something with 18-inch wheels and like a really plain, you know, plain interior. Okay. That's what this is. It's a really cool car. Now, about this particular car, well, I went to a friend of mine. He's like an outdoor athlete. That's why I did it here at near Winsport. He's in the business of sort of high-end apparel and outdoor technical clothes and so forth, okay? Why that's kind of interesting is that most of the time this car was on the highway going from Calgary to Canmore, Banff, Lake Louise. You know, his kids were older, so there was no ferrying, you know, child seats and you know, there's no Cheerios in the car and all the things that you'd expect an SUV that had the school run as its main purpose. Okay, so there's, you know, barely anybody's ever been in the back, despite it having the dual zone or the 4-zone climate control, it's been really well looked after. Okay, so the interior in this car, this is 125,000 kilometers and change. The interior in this car looks better than Cayennes I've seen with less than half the mileage. You know, typically, you know, you'll see them wear on the bolsters. That's the bottom one for the drivers, and there as well. Also, it helps that you're fit and limber and and get in and out of the vehicle without like scraping over the seat. So the interiors in this car is really nice. We sold it as Porsche Calgary. It was serviced there throughout the warranty period. It really hasn't needed any invasive maintenance, or it's never been a problem. It's never had any problems. It recently went into to Regal Tuning to have the oil leak around the valve covers addressed and an oil change. So it has. We just did the service. It was about $2,275, I think. So it's got a fresh service on it. What's interesting about this is because of all the highway mileage, the average speed on this car is like 55 kilometers an hour, and that's really high. I mean, I used to record and check all of the mileages and fuel consumption and stuff of all the cars we had, and used cars and demos and so on. And virtually, you know, the vast majority of the cars have average speeds in the 35 kilometer an hour range. There's not too many below that, and there's not too many above that. So this is 55 kilometers an hour, and the average fuel consumption's 11 liters per 100 kilometers, which is really quite remarkable. I mean, most of these have fuel consumption in the 16 range, 15, 16 range. Let's see if I can just pull that up, because it is an interesting statistic on this car. So yeah, there we go. An average speed of 55 kilometers an hour and an average consumption of 12.3 liters per 100 kilometers. And that is at least 20% better than the average Cayenne, even the V6s. Okay, so that speaks to it being driven on the highway at a constant speed. And why I think that you want to hear is because, of course, if the car's average speed is twice as fast, for the kilometers, that means that the car has been running half as long. Okay, so there's half the amount of time on the engine and the gearbox and drivetrain as a car with, you know, half the average speed. So highway driven, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. It's highway driven. Condition of the car. I mean, let's just go through that here. It's got the full 3M, which we did all the way up to the front clip. The windscreen, we've got a few little marks in the windscreen, but nothing. That's probably the worst one worst one right there, but we don't have any cracks starting, okay? The 3M has done its job and it's covered the front of the car. We don't have any hazing of the bi-xenon headlights. That was an option. You know, we've got some, you know, marks where the 3M is has been peeled off because of a stone chip. But I'm sure if you peeled that protective film off, the paint would look perfect underneath that, okay? You got some very light, again, that's just in the 3M, very light marks. Looking alongside the car, it doesn't look like it has any door dings or scratches at all. Some of these live in garages with kids and bikes and can get horribly marked up. So I don't see any door dings. Oh, there's one tiny one right there. I don't even think it'll photograph, just a little, and that would come out if you had the paintless dent removal, but that's barely noticeable, and that is it for the whole car. I don't see a few little marks in the 3M on the bumper, but that's just in the 3M, and I don't see any marks on the rear of the bumper. Got a little bit of lifting on whatever this piece is here on the bottom of the tailgate. We've got a couple little scratches. What those are from is it opening the hood, and then that becomes the high point, and if you don't watch the height of it, that's how you get those little marks. I just drove it over a gravel road to get here, embarrassingly. So we've got 3M on the bumper, or on the top of the bumper cover here. So that's marked up a little bit, but that's just in the 3M. Sill plate's okay. It's always had, we did these with all the cars. We put these mats in, so you know that's brand new under there. You know, again, there's just a few light marks on the bumper cover, and has a couple of very minor scratches, but that is something that'll would buff out, okay? So that's very minor. So the car is a clean Carfax. It has no accidents, no paint work, no hail, no theft, no vandalism, no nothing. So it's perfect in that regards. Inside and out, it is very, very clean. There's virtually no wear in the interior. There's no wear on the bolsters. There is no scratching of the steering wheel. There's no marking on the gear selector. There's no nothing coming off the buttons. Sometimes that can happen. You know, the white markings on the buttons can come off. That hasn't happened. And there's no issues on the dash. This one has the optional Alcantara headliner. That was a $2,000 option. It actually makes a pretty big difference. You only get that standard, I think, on the turbos. We have the rear side blinds, so that can, you know, if you have kids in the car, that makes a big difference, or pets. It can also keep the interior temperature of the car way down in the summer, okay? And you can see the moonroof. This is a heated multifunction wheel. You can see, there's a little button. I don't know if you can see that. There's a little button there to turn it on. And then we have the chrome or polished aluminum rockers for the gear selector. We have carbon fiber trim on the inside. We have the Bose stereo upgrade. You can see the Bose sound system there. We have heated seats in the front. We have 4-zone climate control. GTSs came with air suspension. That was a $5,000 option. So there's no coil spring. The vehicle's weight rests on an air bellow. And then we have different ride heights, so we can push it down to a loading height, or we can raise it to go off-road. Also, when you have 21-inch wheels, you've got 35 section tires, and that's a pretty stiff sidewall, so the air suspension goes a long way to regaining the ride comfort that you lose with the upgraded wheel tire combinations and the stiff sidewall. Anytime I ordered 20 or anytime a customer ordered 21-inch wheels, I would advise them to get the air suspension as well. Okay, so the heated multifunction wheel, the Bose, the Sport Chrono, that's part of the GTS pack, as is the Sport exhaust. We have, let's see, back here, it's kind of interesting. They don't all have 4-zone climate control, and those are heated rear seats then as well. Okay, so not very many of the cars have this, and not many of them have the Alcantara either. So those are two options that they're expensive too. I think that's around $2,000, and the Alcantara is $2,000. So we've got a pretty nice place to sit back here with the the nice headliner, the side window blinds, the 4-zone climate control, the Bose stereo. Okay. On the exterior of the car, we can see we have the roof racks. They cannot be retrofitted if they're not ordered by the factory. So, and a lot of the Cayennes that came out east, they didn't have them. In Alberta, we put them on pretty much every car. You could get them in black or aluminum, and normally, and also the side window trim, you could get in aluminum or black. So normally I match those. So the roof racks to the window trim. We have the blind spot assist, and you can see that little square on the side of the mirror, and that'll illuminate if somebody is in your blind spot. So they don't all have that either. It's an option. As is the parking radar, and you can see it has those little medallions on the bumper, which is the parking radar. They don't all have that. Bi-xenon headlights with PDLS, so they're active bi-xenons that shine around the corners, and they actually come standard with halogen. Oh, that's the Macan that comes standard with halogen. But to get the PDLS, that's an option, and this car has it. Looking at the engine compartments, we have a 4.5 liter, normally aspirated, 420 horsepower V8 engine. We just did the valve cover gaskets, which are these guys right there. There was some minor additional seepage from the front of the engine, and basically you can't even really see it, but it is there that they noted on the service inspection form. It is not something that I think that the car needs to have done now, because it's pretty packed in there. It's a bit of a job to get at it, and it's not dripping or leaking on the ground or anything like that. It's just a bit of seepage that you get with any or most engines over 100,000 kilometers. Okay, but I will note that. Let me just turn this on for you. And the engine has a really lovely V8 burble and a nice bark when you're on it. So that's kind of what makes this car special. Normally aspirated, these big normally aspirated engines are just being legislated out of existence. So, basically nobody's making them anymore. And so that means that, this is, Okay, let's take this 2013 Porsche Cayenne GTS out for a drive. Fire it up. The ignition is on the left, like they did in the old Le Mans for the old race starts. So you could turn the key with one hand and put it in gear with the other hand. Because it's a GTS, we're going to put it in Sport. This vehicle has the air suspension, which was a $5,000 option. I am going to lower the car to its lowest setting. You can see it comes up on the dash. And we have the Sport exhaust on this car, which you can hear. I have 4-zone climate control in this car. I just hit it on mono so that all 4 positions are 20 degrees. I'm going to put on the heated seats because I like heated seats. and I will turn the music off. I will take note of the trip computer on this car, which shows a average speed of 55 kilometers an hour over the last 10,000 kilometers, and that's really high. Normally cars average about 35 kilometers an hour. To get to 55, you know, a good portion of all your driving is on the highway. And even if you take 1 and 2 hour trips on the highway, it's still hard to get your average over about 60, just because of the time like this where you're, you know, letting the car warm up, or you're stopped at a light or whatever. So this car has a lot of highway kilometers. As I mentioned in the other part of the video, the owner of the car had businesses in Canmore, Banff, and Lake Louise, and the car was often between Calgary and the mountains. All right, the 8-speed gearbox, that replaces the 6-speed gearbox and low-range transfer box of the first generation Cayenne. This is an E2 Cayenne. The first generation was 03 to 2010, and this version is the E2, which is 2011 to 2018. Within the E2s, there's E2.1 and E2.2. This is the same with all Porsches. They break the 6 or 7 year model lifespan into 2 segments, and the second segment usually gets a refresh of some sort. In this case, for the E2s, E2.2s, they went away from the normally aspirated V8 engine in the GTS and the S to a twin turbo, and they lost this great V8 noise with the twin turbo. And I mean, it's still a fine engine, but it lost a lot of the character. So with the GTS Cayenne, you know, you get something that really handles. I'm just going through this roundabout, and this does not feel like an SUV at all. It's even on winter tires. So got to be a little bit careful here, but you really get a sporty drive. And you know, there's so many versions of Porsche Cayennes, from something that really looks like a Touareg at $70,000. That's when we sold them new, to all the way up to over 200 for a Turbo S. And so, you know, the variant is of course a lot to do with it. This is a GTS. There was the regular V6. There was a diesel. There was the Cayenne S with a 400 horsepower, 4.8 liter engine. There was the GTS with the same engine but breathed on to 420, and then there was the turbo and the Turbo S. So anyway, it's just great. Shifts really quick, and it's got fantastic brakes. Okay, big red brakes from the turbo. I think there's six caliper, but anyway, they take about a third of the surface area of the rotor. So very, very powerful brakes. I've driven these on the racetrack, and they do not lose their composure at all. The brakes don't start on fire. It doesn't overheat. It doesn't do anything. I've driven these cars at over 200 kilometers an hour on the Autobahn in Germany, and they're steady as a rock. I've been through an accident at 220 kilometers on the Autobahn following one of these, and we had an emergency lane change at over 200 kilometers an hour, and the car did it no problem. So they test these cars at the absolute limit, and on the racetrack and Nürburgring and Weissach, and I mean, you don't really need an SUV to do that, but with a Porsche, you know, you pay the money, and you do get a lot of car for the money, and it's been thoroughly engineered and thoroughly tested. You know, the servicing isn't free. You know, when it comes to replacing tires and brakes and stuff like that, you know, obviously they're not the cheapest ones you can find. But you know, you don't have any worries whatsoever about brake fade, no matter what you do to the vehicle. When we test these, when Porsche lets the sales managers and the salesmen test these vehicles, they're out on the track all day long, and they don't suffer. Okay, so that's I don't even know where I'm going here, but so let's turn around. try not to stay in one place for too long. And I'll let you listen to this engine again. That's wonderful. I mean, and this is just, you're just not, you know, this is, you're not going to be able to buy this anymore. This kind of engine, normally aspirated V8, is just being completely legislated out of existence. And people, you know, will embrace electric mobility, as a, you know, I think they should. But it'll always be nice to have something like this around as well, because you know, this never, you know, the V8 soundtrack never gets old. Okay, so I hope that's given you a short test drive. We have a car, or an idea of what it's like to drive. We have a car with 125,000 kilometers on it, just over that. We have a fresh service. You know, it was bought in Calgary by a friend of mine, and so I've known the car its entire life. You know, it's no accidents and no paintwork car, which is pretty rare for an SUV. And you know, most of the mileage is on the highway. So anyway, it's a great car and a really great combination of having something that's still a Porsche, having something that's sporty, having something that's practical, and having something that you can buy at a fraction of the new car price. Okay, thank you very much, Lawrence Romanowski from Calgary, Canada. And it'll run rings around this G-Wagon Army truck that's in front of us. Just run rings around it. This is an interesting car, something that you really can't buy anymore. They're not going to make any more of them. It has all the virtues of a sort of a mid-sized SUV. It can go to the racetrack. I've had these on the racetrack, and you'd be amazed that they can do it. You know, you don't run out of brakes. Not these anyway. You know, the car acquits itself really well. You can take your wife to dinner in it, and it's a nice, or your husband or your partner, or whoever you're taking to dinner. And it's an elegant, comfortable ride. You know, you can go on a long road trip with it, and it's comfortable. You can just go get groceries. The guy who owned it used to just put his bike in the back all the time. So it really is a car that appeals to you know, you on many levels if you're an enthusiast, with all the virtues of practical virtues of an SUV. And it's also a Porsche, and it's also a pretty sporting Porsche. 121,000 plus freight and PDI new, and so it's you know, it's depreciated to only a fraction of that. And you know, even the cheapest Cayenne on Auto Trader is 35,000. You know, so it's not even that much more than the base Cayenne, which at $70,000, when we didn't bring in too many like that, but they look like a Volkswagen Touareg. I mean, they're not exciting in the slightest, and the engine is just okay. It's fine, but it's, you know, it's not an engine that you like to extend or has any sort of musical or enthusiast qualities in it. It's just a car. But this is more than that. This is fast and fun and makes nice noises and has a great interior, and again, it's been looked after with mostly highway miles. So with that, I'll wrap it up. Lawrence Romanowski from Calgary, Canada, 2013 Porsche Cayenne GTS, 4.8 liter, normally aspirated, and that's for sale in Calgary right now.